threatened shipping. They have attacked a number of ships either in the Hormuz Strait. They have recently today attacked a ship within the Hormuz area, and they are also attacking ships which have left the Hormuz area and are in the Indian Ocean. So this is still up in the air, and until this is resolved by the Americans and the Israelis, it will be difficult for the war to be called off and for the Gulf to start operating normally.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee, for sharing that. Please do stay with us as we come back to you. Now we stay in Iran. The Iranian ambassador to the United Nations, Amir Saeed Irawani, has accused the Security Council of ignoring what he calls a war crime after Iran. Irawani has said that the Israel killed 4 of its diplomats in the weekend strike on a Beirut hotel. He has added that the Council is turning a blind eye to this grave violation despite its primary responsibility under the UN Charter to maintain international peace and security. Let's listen in.
It is deeply regrettable that Security Council continues to remain silent. The Council is turning a blind eye to this grave violation despite its primary responsibility under the UN Charter to maintain international peace and security. Instead, some Council members are attempting to reverse the roles and position of victims and aggressors. The targeted killing of diplomats on the territory of another sovereign state is a grave terrorist attack, a war crime and a flagrant violation of international law. It violates the UN Charter, the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, and the Convention on the Protection of Internationally Protected Persons. The Islamic Republic of Iran strongly condemns this cowardly crime.
Now we welcome back Mr. Gautam Mukherjee. He joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee, for staying with us. Now, staying in Iran, Iranian ambassador has called this, in UN. And we have seen last year so many times other leaders have called, like Ukrainian leader, Palestinian leaders. They've all voiced their concern on what happened with their envoys, what happened to their delegations, what happened to their people. But we haven't seen anything effective coming in from UN. What is the point of UN realistically right now?
If you are talking about the United Nations, I don't think they have an effective point of view. If you're talking about the United States, I don't think they particularly care that that Iranian diplomats have been killed. It is a continuation of the war. If they can sink a ship at sea and kill over 100 people who were sailing in that ship, 4 diplomats is just one more episode of this war.
Yes, and so now that if UN is what it is now, not effective to bring in resolution or justice for what's right, do you think Board of Peace that's initiated by President Trump, do you think they would think this is a chance to do something effective? Although, of course, President Trump is in the war in the Middle East with Iran.
No, the Board of Peace has hardly started functioning. Some people have already left it. It was set up basically for the, if you like, the rehabilitation of Gaza. It is not equipped in any way to deal with this broader war between the United States, Israel, and Iran and its satellites, that is the Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthi in Yemen. So I don't think the Board of Peace will have any role to play.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, for sharing that. Please do stay with us. Now moving to US President Donald Trump has announced plans for the first new oil refinery in the United States in about 5 decades. The project will be built in Brownsville, Texas, and is expected to receive investment support from India's Reliance Industries. President Trump said the facility will be developed by a company called America First Refining and will process U.S. shale oil. The project is linked to an earlier plan initially developed by Element Fuels, which had already completed site preparation and obtained key permits for a plant capable of processing around 160,000 barrels of oil per day. The announcement comes as Washington looks for ways to address rising energy prices amid tensions in the Middle East, including the conflict involving Iran. Meanwhile, White House press secretary has said that the American public will see oil and gas prices drop rapidly once the objectives of the joint Israeli-US air war against Iran are fully achieved. Let's listen in.
The president and his energy team are closely watching the markets, speaking with industry leaders, and the U.S. military is drawing up additional options following the president's directive to continue keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. I will not broadcast what those options look like, but just know the president is not afraid to use them. Rest assured to the American people, the recent increase in oil and gas prices is temporary, and this operation will result in lower gas prices in the long term. Once the national security objectives of Operation Epic Fury are fully achieved, Americans will see oil and gas prices drop rapidly, potentially even lower than they were prior to the start of the operation. And we will live in a world where Iran can no longer threaten the United States or our allies with a nuclear bomb.
Now we welcome back Mr. Gautam Mukherjee. He joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how significant is this that, an Indian company is behind this huge investment and the project that's going to be opened in Texas?
Well, Reliance Industries has been investing in American shale oil development for over a decade. So they are very much present in the American space right from very near the beginning of shale oil development. For a long time, it was considered to be too expensive as a method of extracting oil from shale. But today it has become ubiquitous, and a lot of American oil, in addition to its offshore oil, onshore oil, and so on, is indeed from shale. In addition to that, Reliance Industries is one of the largest refiners of a variety of oil, ranging from heavy crude like what comes from Venezuela, the light crude from Russia, as well as the Gulf. And not only do we process the various items out of this crude, it's not just petrol and diesel, there are many, many other products. Reliance sells it back to Europe as refined petroleum, petrol, diesel in the main. So it is a very prominent member of the global setup in refineries. For America to partner with Reliance is altogether proper, and America has let this has been neglecting refineries. As you pointed out, this is the first refinery in 50 years in America. Texas is a major oil region of America, and for Reliance Industries to be involved in it is entirely appropriate. And also from the diplomatic point of view, this is a hand of friendship between India and America. And in fact, President Trump has thanked Reliance for joining hands with the people, the America First people who are launching this refinery.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Gautam Mukherjee for joining us today and sharing that insight. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reforms, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. The US military says it has destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying boats in the Strait of Hormuz. After President Donald Trump warned Tehran not to deploy mines there, the strait is one of the world's most critical shipping routes for oil and gas. 3 commercial vessels have been damaged by what officials describe as an unknown projectiles in the Strait of Hormuz. The incident has heightened concerns about maritime security and global energy supplies. Iran has launched a new wave of missile and drone attacks across the Gulf region. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates say their defenses intercepted projectiles targeting military and energy sites. The Israeli military says it has begun an additional wave of strikes on targets in Tehran. The operation follows earlier attacks on command centers linked to Iran's armed forces. An Israeli airstrike in the town of Tamnin al-Tahta in eastern Lebanon has killed 7 people and wounded 18 others. According to Lebanon's health ministry, state media says the building hit in the attack was housing a Syrian family. Iran's police chief Ahmad Reza Radan has warned that anyone protesting at the enemy's bidding will be treated as an enemy. He said security forces have their fingers on the trigger as authorities move to prevent unrest. North Korea has expressed support for Mojtaba Khamenei after he was named as Iran's supreme leader. State media also condemned that what Pyongyang called the illegal US-Israeli attack on Iran. Europe's far-right parties are divided over the US-Israeli war on Iran, figures including Nigel Farage and Spain's Vox back these strikes, while others warn the conflict could trigger. Now we move on. Russia says it is in constant contact with Iranian leadership as tensions continue in the Middle East. The Kremlin says Moscow is maintaining regular communication with Tehran and is willing to help support efforts aimed at stabilizing the region. Officials say President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly stated that Russia is ready to do what it can to help restore peace and stability. In recent days, Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have held talks with their Iranian counterparts. President Putin also held a phone call with US President Donald Trump earlier this week as diplomatic contacts continue. Let's in fact listen into what the Kremlin spokesperson has shared.
Как говорил президент Путин, Россия всегда готова внести посильный вклад в дело восстановления мира и стабильности в регионе. Это первое. Эти все темы не обсуждались вчера во время телефонного разговора. И, конечно же, в наше время трудно говорить о степени достоверности этой информации. Является ли это какой-то правдивой информацией или информационным взбросом. Тут определенная доля сомнения должна всегда присутствовать.
Now we welcome Mr. Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us live from Riga. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this war that, we are in the second week now, this Russia, is it trying to conduct an indirect diplomacy like the back channel diplomacy?
No. What they were saying is just plain fake news. The last thing that Russia wants is diplomacy, because they're making money hand over fist by this. They will want the Hormuz Straits to be blocked as long as possible, because that puts pressure on everybody else. It means that Trump will probably drop even more sanctions to try and keep the world oil prices stable, and Putin will make more and more money that he can use to attack Ukraine. So basically, this is typical normal Lavrov and Putin words that are just plain lies for their domestic audience and for audiences like Africa, who also may be struggling with the oil.
Right. So, how do you think Russia is benefiting with the war now that's unfolding in the Middle East?
Well, because countries like your own, Japan, South Korea, and China rely upon oil coming through the Gulf of Hormuz to feed their industry and to feed.
South of the town of Qam, Hezbollah also says it has struck Israeli military sites in the area multiple times in recent days as clashes continue along the Lebanon-Israel frontier. The exchange of fire comes amid escalating confrontation in southern Lebanon, with both sides reporting ongoing military operations near the border. Now we welcome back Mr. Glenn Grant. He's an expert advisor.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for joining us again. Now, looking at Israel and Lebanon, do you think that Israel is motivated to take this time or this chance and finish Hezbollah once and for all?
Well, I mean, let's be blunt about this. They've not managed to finish Hezbollah in Gaza, so I don't think they're going to actually finish Hezbollah in Lebanon. They will try. They will try, but I don't think they'll be successful, because I think, to be blunt, I think that this is one one war that can only be ended by a political solution at some stage, because Israel simply doesn't have enough firepower or energy to fight both Iran and Hezbollah at the same time. So I think that we're just going to see this drag on. There will be much devastation in southern Lebanon. And the only people really who can actually change this is Lebanon itself. We have to wait and see whether they just run away and hide, or whether the Lebanese actually stand up and try and do something about this whole thing.
Right. And why do you think the Lebanese government or Lebanese, yes, their defense capabilities are not to the point where they can tackle this? You know, they've always tried to hang on or to ask US for the support against Hezbollah or against militias within their own country. Why do you think this is the state of Lebanon now?
Well, I mean, Lebanon has, I don't know how many years Lebanon has been at war. But I mean, they've been battered. They've been battered left and right for
The Omani Navy. An explosion in the stern triggered a fire in the engine compartment where the 3 missing crew had been working. Authorities are now investigating this incident as tensions continue in the strategic waterway. Now we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, you know, Strait of Hormuz that we are seeing the situation escalate, how do you analyze the current Strait of Hormuz? Do you think that, although U.S. has said that, you know, they are going to be protecting some ships, we did not see that happening?
In this case, interesting is what happened in Iran. Recently, the President Pezeshkian apologized to attack neighboring countries. Despite this, Iran continued to attack neighboring countries. And now, the Thailand, Iran tried to attack the ship of the Thailand, but Thailand expressed neutrality and not involve this. This means that what Iran want to do is very simple. The confusion in the oil market and rising prices and stock market is down. This kind of thing will be good pressure for the President Trump to stop their military operation. So because President Trump is a businessman, that is their strategy, I think. But at the same time, there is a difference of the remark and action. So that's why who controls Iran is a very interesting point in this case. There is a possibility that Revolutionary Guard is controlling Iran instead of the president, and so that's why they continue to attack the neighboring countries despite they apologize to attack neighboring countries. Including China is a very important part, and Chinese ship shares 38% of the all ships which carry the oil and going through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's why China is biggest user. If the safety of the Strait of Hormuz is under threatened by Iran, it will affect China most. So that's why despite China is the most important supporter for Iran, despite this, they ignore the will of China. So under such kind of situation, in the long run, Iran will lose any supporters, and there is a high risk. But Revolutionary Guard only focusing on military operation, and there is no someone who can take care of the politics in Iran. That's why such kind of thing is happening. So
Yes.
can Iran stop it? This is very difficult, I think.
So, Dr. Nagao, building on your answer, do you think that there's a difference of strategy between President Pezeshkian and Ali Khamenei, the late leader, and the current new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei?
Mustafa Khomeini hasn't shown anything, I believe, because he did not have the political experience. He was injured, and so that's why the Revolutionary Guards need someone as a symbol. But indeed, he is a good guy. The Revolutionary Guard can control. So that's why current real leader is Revolutionary Guard, leader in the Revolutionary Guard, and by using his symbolic leadership, they try to do anything they want, and ignoring the President Pezeshkian or other political leaders in Iran. So Iran's policies rely on the military organization like Revolutionary Guard. It's the current situation, I guess.
So do you think that there's a disalignment between President Pezeshkian and the IRGC forces?
There's a possibility Revolutionary Guard leadership is more stronger than the President Pezeshkian, I think, because in the Iran's political system, President Pezeshkian is represent of the one part of the Iran's government. Revolutionary Guard under the former leader Khamenei is top level leadership of Iran, but President Pezeshkian leads section is under this Revolutionary Guard top leaders. So that's why which one is more powerful? I think the Revolutionary Guard side, and especially in the war, military organization can show their strong political power. So that's why currently Revolutionary Guard is leading Iran's policy. That's why even if the President Pezeshkian tried to stop it, and he failed it, I guess.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for sharing that deep insight with us. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next news. Now, moving on to Europe, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said that the next round of trilateral talks on Ukraine could take place in Istanbul, Turkey. But there are no specific details as of now, only an understanding that the peace process will continue. Peskov has added that Istanbul is an option, though there is no specific clarity yet. This comes as Russia and Ukraine held 3 sessions of talks in the Turkish city last year. Negotiations with US and mediations have been held this year in Abu Dhabi and Geneva. Meanwhile, Peskov has also said that Britain was involved in Ukraine's missile strike on Russia. He also added that 6 people were killed, 42 were injured in an Ukrainian missile strikes on Russia's Bryansk region. Now we welcome back Mr. Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us live from Riga. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for joining us again. Now, do you think that there can be genuine effort by both sides to have a breakthrough or to allow this next talks to happen anywhere in the world, even if it's Geneva or Abu Dhabi or Turkey?
No, I don't. I think we're just wasting time at the moment again. I don't see any evidence that either side is willing to compromise, and certainly on the Ukraine side, they shouldn't compromise. Ukraine is actually beginning to push Russia back in the south of the country. That may actually make Russia start to sweat and think a bit more about what it's doing. But both sides are strong enough to keep going. Neither side wants to give up land. So I think we're just the best the peace talks will do is perhaps talk about prisoner exchange a bit more.
Right. And now welcoming back Dr. Satoru Nagao. Dr. Nagao, thank you for staying with us. What's your take on that? Do you have the same perspective as Mr. Grant, or would you like to add something?
Yeah, indeed, I agree, because Russia does not have the will to end the war, because if they continue the war, even if it's small, they can get more territory. And if the war ends, Russian people will ask the question, is this a variable war? So during their fighting, there is no question about it because they need to win. So that's why the continuing war is beneficial for President Putin. And so negotiation to seek ceasefire is for Russia, for President Putin. This is buying time to avoiding the additional sanctions. That is my analysis recently. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And building on that, Mr. Grant, how do you think, as a lot of countries who are allies of some Western nations require their support in Middle East as they battle Iran, do you think this European countries will be, and coalition of the willing will be able to sustain their support towards Ukraine while also supporting their allies in Middle East like UAE or Saudi Arabia?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. I don't see any change happening here. In fact, it may this war may actually be a degree to the benefit of Ukraine, because if other countries want support from Ukraine to teach them how to fight Shahid, they may actually be willing to cough up some money for it. Especially Saudi Arabia, that can afford to bankroll Ukrainian debt without any difficulty at all. So I think that I don't think we'll see any changes to the structure of things, but we might actually see some changes to the moral support for Ukraine.
Oh, right. Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Naga, what's your take? How do you analyze? Do you think that European countries will be able to manage balancing support for their allies in the Middle East and also towards Ukraine? Do you think they, like Mr. Grant stated, that the moral support might decline?
Moral support go up.
Oh, go up. Sorry. Thank you for correcting. Thank you for correcting over there.
I focusing with a different aspect in this case is, of course, I agree with it. I agree with you, but at the same time, I focusing on the stock of ammunition indeed in this case, because if the U.S. run out the ammunition, of course, the U.S. cannot provide enough ammunition to Ukraine, and it will affect the situation in Russia and Ukraine. So that's why the Middle East situation can affect the situation in Ukraine. But currently, of course, U.S. realize this situation, I think. So that's why some certain number of the ammunition the U.S. is keeping for the European state, I believe. So that's why this is concern, but it will not happen, I think. But at the same time, such kind of military hardware will affect the situation. That is true, I think.
Right. And now looking at Middle East again, but do you think, okay, I'd like to go to Mr. Grant next. Mr. Grant, do you think that, like, how Russia is supposed to pay for the reconstruction, do you think that we would see something similar in Middle East? Do you think Middle East, for Iran's reconstruction, do you think Israel and US would be asked?
Oh, I don't know where you get that idea from. I don't think either country is going to pay anything for Iran at all. And I don't see that there's going to be, would you say, the war is not going to finish in a hurry. The Iranians are about to make this a long-lasting war, and they're going to keep fighting. So I don't see any surrender and reconstruction coming. So I think that we're in for a long war with this one. And reconstruction, no chance from either of those two countries.
Lastly, Dr. Naga, what's your take on that?
Okay, currently the war hasn't finished, so that's why it's a little bit too early to talk about this. But at the same time, so what kind of government we can see in Iran will affect this situation. If the current Iranian government will survive in this war, of course, there's a possibility China could be the supporter for them. But at the same time, recently, this government tried to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, And this is not good for China, and China is very frustrated, I think. So that's why even if the current government continue, if they ignore the interest of China, China will not support them. So that's why in this case rely on the policy just now. And in this case, if the political leadership leads the Iranian policy, they worry about this. But only the military leadership, especially the Revolutionary Guard, lead this. In this case, they will not care about this diplomatically. Only military they care about. In this case, there's a possibility China will be frustrated. They will not support Iran. But that could happen. And if the government has changed and more pro-US or something, the government will establish, in this case, completely different situation. So that's why what happen now and what happen in the future in the war will affect who will support the rebuilding in Iran. That is the current situation, I think.
With that, I'd like to thank both our guests, Mr. Grant and Mr. Dr. Satoru Nagawa, for today's discussion. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome, I'm Ruby Barlow and you are watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some headlines of this hour. The conflict in the Middle East has escalated further, with both sides trading intense new airstrikes across multiple fronts. Meanwhile, the Iranian government has launched a severe nationwide clampdown on internal dissent to maintain control as military pressure from the US and Israel mounts. Reported injuries among American service members have surpassed 150 as the high-intensity military campaign in Iran continues to escalate. Defense sources indicate that the vast majority of these casualties are linked to recent missile strikes. The US Energy Secretary has removed a social media post that claimed the Navy was escorting an oil vessel through the Strait of Hormuz. Officials have not stated the reason for the deletion, but the move comes amid extreme sensitivity regarding the military movements in the volatile energy corridor. Global equity markets have stabilized as investors weigh latest inflation data against ongoing geopolitical risks in the Middle East. While energy volatility remains a concern, strong performance in the technology sector has provided a critical buffer for major indices during midweek trading. China has launched a massive nationwide artificial intelligence initiative aimed at creating new jobs and rejuvenating its stagnant economy. Beijing is pushing for deep AI integration across all sectors of society, hoping the technological leap will drive industrial productivity and offset current unemployment challenges. Oracle has surpassed analyst expectations for quarterly revenue as the rapid adoption of artificial intelligence continues to drive massive demand for cloud services. The company is seeing record backlogs as tech giants race to secure the computing power necessary to train and deploy next-generation generative AI models. Microsoft has filed a formal amicus brief supporting Anthropic in its ongoing legal challenge against the US Department of Defense. The tech giant is urging the court to re-examine the Pentagon's AI contracting procedures to ensure fair competition and transparency across the rapidly evolving defense technology sector. Boeing has secured a $289 million contract to supply Israel with 5,000 advanced smart bombs as the regional conflict continues to intensify. The new agreement ensures a steady flow of precision-guided munitions to the Israeli Defense Forces, reinforcing the strategic military alliance and bolstering Tel Aviv's long-term aerial combat capabilities. According to the Iranian president's son, Iran's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei is safe despite rumors of injury during the ongoing conflict with Israel and the United States. His appointment was pushed through by the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which view him as a more compliant successor supporting hardline policies. Senior political and clerical figures had expressed reservations about his selection, delaying the formal announcement by several hours. Experts say the IRGC's influence has grown stronger since the war began, and Khamenei's elevation may signal a more aggressive foreign policy and tighter control at home. Now joining us live, we have retired Major General A.K. Sea-Watch, who is a geostrategic expert, joining us from New Delhi. Now, Major General, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. Do you think that the loss of the long-term leader, who was also a religious leader in Iran, he was also in negotiations, do you think all of these things could contribute to the assassination as a bad decision? Now Iran has a perhaps more hardline leader who is perhaps less amenable to negotiations to end this war. Does Iran now have nothing to lose?
Absolutely. It looks like that Iran has nothing to lose, Ruby. Two, three things stands out very clearly. Very rightly said, first of all, US and Israel had underestimated the strength of Iran. And especially US thought that if they kill Ayatollah al-Khamenei, along with the top party leaders as well as the military commander, possibly Iran will come onto the knees and will come on a negotiating table. But it didn't happen. There was a succession plan which was already made, not only 1 tier, but 2 tier, 3 tier and 4 tier. And the complete power is now given to IRGC, and it has been decentralized in 31 provinces. Though the succession plan did not mention about Mojtaba Khamenei, because Ayatollah al-Khamenei did not want his own son to be elevated, but certainly he being a very fanatic, radical and very close to IRGC, it's IRGC which has forced him to be elevated to Supreme Leader appointment. He is considered a shadow power because it was he who was taking decision last about 2-3 years, not the Ayatollah al-Khamenei. He's more radical, more powerful, and very rightly said by you that now instead of Ayatollah al-Khamenei, you find a much more radical supreme leader which has now come into the power in Iran. And the way situation is panning out, it doesn't seem the war will finish it out too fast. It looks as if the war is getting intensified. Remember what Iran has also done very cleverly. It has got targeted and basically addressed all the military bases of US in Middle East. The reason was simple, that if you do that, all these countries will then pressurize US for a ceasefire. Second thing is to send a message to these countries that they have got US bases to get a protection. Today, those bases have become liability for them. Third thing is why Iran has hit these bases. If they are closer to Iran, surprise factor can be also achieved. So the issue is today the intensity of the war is increasing day by day, and you find that Iran is also not only hitting military bases, it is also hitting Israel. Tel Aviv, you find a lot of destruction has taken place in spite of Israel having a multi-tier defense. In the sense they have Iron Dome, Iron Beam, and basically arrow system is also there, David Sling is there, Patriot missile, and third, in spite of that, there are a lot of damage which is taking place in Israel. As far as Iran is concerned, the SWOT analysis was carried out by Iran. What is their strength? Their strength is missile, rocket, and drones, and they can sustain for missile and drones are almost missile and rocket especially are almost about 8 to 10,000, and drones are about 1 lakh. So there is a capability of sustaining for a longer period. At the same time, one can say they are all alone. They're not much help coming from Russia and China, though Russia and China helped them before the war in terms of weapon, ammunition, rocket, missile, but they are giving them a real-time intelligence as presently today. But certainly I think it will be a long haul. What are their weaknesses? As far as Iran is concerned, there are 2-3 weaknesses with Iran. They don't have very strong air power. Their air defense system by and large neutralized, and they have a weak navy. These are the certain weaknesses, but what is the strength is that they have an arsenal of missile, rockets, and drones, and they are using them to the best, and they have also blocked the Strait of Hormuz, because blocking Strait of Hormuz has now disturbed the complete economy of the world. 20% of the oil of world flows from Strait of Hormuz. Today, food, fuel, fertilizer rates are skyrocketing. So overall, Iran has nothing to lose. Iran says that if we have to go down in the sea, we will also take you with you. And therefore, the point is, Iran is not ready to compromise. The intensity of the war is not come down after 12 days. It has increased.
Major General, some analysts have said that this decrease that we've seen in the amount of missiles and drones sent from Iran to Israel, to US military bases in the Gulf states, is not indicative of perhaps reduced capability, but perhaps a change in strategy, rather one that uses a mosaic method where decision making is decentralized. Of course, as the Supreme Leader was assassinated, this change in strategy perhaps was advantageous for the Iranians. What do you make of this assessment? Do you believe that the decrease that we've seen in the amount of arms being sent is perhaps a change in strategy or an indicator of reduction in stock from the Iranians?
No one is very sure what is the stock of Iran. Everyone is doing a rough prediction, and possibly everyone underestimated the stockpile which Iran had. And it looks as if they have enough for almost about a month, and they can sustain fighting for a month at least. It looks like that. We can be wrong in our appreciation. But what point you were hitting, Ruby, what they have done is they have decentralized it. And now there are 31 divisions which are there in IRGC covering the whole Iran, and they are striking back. The point is that everyone thought after the death of Ayatollah al-Khamenei, the supreme leader, you will find the Iran will get demoralized, they will come to the knees. That has not happened. In fact, the intensity is increasing day by day. And Mustafa Khamenei, who was injured, possibly is now giving its own orders. But all said and done, to me, don't look as if the intensity going down. It's a multi-pronged strategy Iran is adopting. One place it is hitting on Israel. Second place it is hitting on the military bases in the Middle East. Third, it has blocked the Strait of Hormuz. And its proxies are also very effective in Hezbollah in Lebanon. They are hitting the another part of Israel. And Houthi rebels have blocked Red Sea. So therefore, you considering everything, it looks as if the war is not ending soon. It looks war is prolonged and it will go to a next level. And very rightly appreciated by you that Mustafa Khamenei, though he's the son of Ayatollah Khamenei, but he's more radical than his father. And IRGC has full faith in him. And he is considered a shadow power. So therefore, to me, it looks like that we are, the way situation is finding out, war is not going to end so soon.
Major General, please stay with us as we move to our next story. Now, according to reports, Iran's new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has been appointed by the Revolutionary Guards. The guards reportedly pushed through his appointment, overriding opposition from senior ayatollahs and political figures, consolidating their influence over the country's leadership. Mojtaba Khamenei, the second son of late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, may has been wounded in the recent US-Israeli strikes. Regardless, the guards are now believed to hold the decisive authority in Iran, potentially driving a more hardline domestic and foreign policy. Meanwhile, concerns persist that the new leadership could transform Iran into a military-dominated state, with diminished space for moderate or pragmatic voices, as the ongoing war continues to shape political power within the country. Now, joining us live, we have Dr. Satoru Nagao, who is a fellow at the Hudson Institute in Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Satoru Nagao, it's a pleasure to have you again on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, in choosing the son of the late Supreme Leader, some areas of the Iranian bureaucracy thought that this is almost a monarchical type of move. You have the late Supreme Leader and then his son, almost like a king and a prince. Of course, they thought that this perception would not be popular in Iran, as the previous Islamic revolution was, of course, to overthrow a monarchy. Now, how might we see this new Supreme Leader being perceived by the Iranian public? Of course, he's known to be a bit more hardline. Could this perception of a empire be received badly by the Iranian people?
Yes, generally, if this is a peacetime, he is not a candidate to be the leader, because it looks like the kingdom. But this is war, and he lost his parents, wife, or children, so something like that. Because of this, the people do not resist him to become the leader. So that's why this is, because of the emergency, he won the leader status. But at the same time, if this is a peacetime, he will face some problem. And in case of his career, he haven't experienced as a leader in the political field. So if something political is needed, he has not used his experience because lack of experience. So that's why he rely on Revolutionary Guard. So this is emergency. That's why he is a leader. And that's why just now, because of the war, they are integrated. But if the war will end in the future, in this case, he will face a problem. And one more thing is true, I think, because he relies on the Revolutionary Guard, the leadership of the Revolutionary Guard is important, but this leadership as an organization is also rely on the power. So US and Israel attacked many facilities of the Revolutionary Guard. Revolutionary Guard's influence is declining. Of course, as Iran as a country, their diplomatic influence is also declining because of the last some years they face war with Israel, and their militants lost members and military equipment. So compare with Saudi Arabia, compare with the UAE, also the influential country in this region, Turkey also, Iran's military power is declining. So that's why, anyway, through this battle, Iran will lose influence. In this case, Iran will lose the influence of the Revolutionary Guard. Iran will lose the influence as a nation. So still in the Syria, of course, Iran is the biggest country. But in the power game in the Middle East, Iran's influence will decline. And Revolutionary Guard's card just now is blockade of the Hormuz. But blockade of Hormuz is controversial for Iran because 38% of the ship carrying oil going through the Strait of Hormuz is China, which is a supporter with Iran. So then this is biggest biggest user of the Strait of Hormuz. So that's why China will not show the comfortable face for Iran if Iran continues to blockade Hormuz. That is a problem for Iran.
Dr. Nagao, please stay us as we move to our next story. A cargo vessel has been struck by an unknown projectile in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. According to United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, the impact caused a fire on board the ship. The crew was forced to evacuate and immediately requested assistance. Authorities say the incident took place in one of the world's most critical shipping routes for global oil suppliers. There is no immediate information on casualties or the source of the projectile. The development comes as tensions remain high across the Gulf amid the ongoing regional conflict. Now back to you, Major General Sea-Watch. Of course, the impact of this war on oil prices has been massive. It's been a major domestic pressure in many countries not connected to the conflict, such as Bangladesh, where universities have been shut, fuel sales have been limited. This Strait of Hormuz as a military asset, how essential will it be to a US-Israeli victory? Can they take back control from Iran? You mentioned before that Iran has quite a weak navy, but this geographic point is very crucial to this conflict so far.
You know, Ruby, what happened is that obviously, first of all, Strait of Hormuz is very, very important because 20% of the world oil and 35% of the LNG passes from this choke point. And this choke point is between Iran and Oman. Now, the point is that, of course, the US Navy is claiming that they will be escorting the cargo ship and the tankers. But the point is, no one is taking chance because, first of all, everyone knows it that Iran has got a drone facility and the drones can strike any ship inside this Strait of Hormuz. The second thing is insurance is very costly and not too many companies are coming for insurance. And also there is a chance that Iranians have also mined the sea. Having said so, as of today, the Strait of Hormuz is blocked. No ship is going. 2-3 ships have tried. One of them has been hit and it is already struck inside the Strait of Hormuz. So the point is, it will have an adverse effect on the complete economy of the world. Food, fuel, fertilizer will become very costly. The oil which was passing through in Strait of Hormuz, which was coming from all these Middle East countries like Iraq, it was coming Saudi, UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait. It is all struck now, and their agitated refineries have been also hit. Their oil producing capacity also has been reduced considerably. At the same time, the imports which they were getting in terms of food, in terms of vegetable, that is also struck. So therefore, the economy obviously is going to suffer. Now the question comes is, can the US take over the Strait of Hormuz? That is a $1 million question. It may be possible because if you see that USS Abraham Lincoln, which was once very close, has been pushed back because US Abraham Lincoln, it can be also vulnerable and it can be a target of Iran strikes in terms of missile, rocket and drones. And that's why they wanted to get out of the range from Iranian, especially missiles. But now, since they want to take back Strait of Hormuz, that possibly they have to move forward. That the only thing is that physically they have to take over. There is an island very close by. The US may take over that island and try to dominate Strait of Hormuz. The time will only tell. I do agree that considerable oil of China also passes through it. Will China accept this, or China will open another front of taking more oil from Russia the way India is doing it? Time will only tell. But as on today, the Strait of Hormuz is blocked and it is affecting adversely the economy of the whole world. How things will pan out in future, let's see how it happens. But today, it looks like that. Second very important point is, whatever China may say, but Iran feels this is the trump card they have. And this trump card they are not going to go waste. And therefore, they will keep on blocking it until unless forcibly the Strait of Hormuz is taken by the US if the US is capable of taking this.
Major General, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Now to our next story, a Sri Lankan court has reportedly ordered that the bodies of 84 Iranian sailors that were killed in an attack on the Iris Dena warship would be handed over to the Iranian embassy. The attack was carried out by a torpedo from a US submarine while the ship was returning from a naval exercise organised by India. The court order follows a request from Gala Harbour Police. The bodies are currently being stored at the morgue in Gala's National Hospital. In a related development, Sri Lanka has granted 30-day entry visas to 208 crew members from a second Iranian vessel, the Iris Bushahir, which was taken in after experiencing engine trouble near the island. The Foreign Ministry in Colombo is in touch with the Iranian embassy, which is consulting Tehran, and a response from Iran is expected in the coming days. Sri Lanka maintains strong economic ties with both Washington and Tehran, with the US accounting for about 40% of apparel exports and Iran being a major tea buyer. Now, back to you, Dr. Nagao. Can you comment on the legality of the attacks on these ships? Of course, they were quite far away from the conflict. They were off the coast of Sri Lanka. They were a guest of the Indian Navy doing a training exercise. Should the US have rescued the sailors whose ship sinked? Trump has also said that it was fun to sink the ship. So can you comment a bit more on the legality of this move, considering it was so far away from the conflict and had many other factors influencing the situation?
For a long time, people forget about war. So that's why such kind of question exists. But this is warship. Warship should prepare any emergency anytime. If the Iran unarmed this ship, this is Iran's problem, because unarmed or not is military secret. Other country cannot know. And in case of this ship is running south of Sri Lanka. This means that this is a course to approach Diego Garcia, which is a US base. And this is a course to Iran. So this means that Iranian crew can expect they will enter war zone. So that's why, in this case, this is part of war, and the warship should be the target anytime, and the ship of the Iranian side should prepare such kind of situation. Even if under such kind of situation they face the problem, in this case, this is their responsibility. So legal matter is not a problem in this case because this is warship. This is not a civil purpose ship. This is warship and prepare for war anytime. Unfortunately, they are dead. This is not good, but this is part of war and this is not out of rule. That is clear, I think. But for a long time, such kind of battle, we haven't experienced worldwide. This is nation versus nation battle, state versus state battle. So that's why the people forget about this fact. This is warship. That is very important.
Dr. Nagao, what type of pressure may the Sri Lankan government and their Foreign Affairs Ministry be under at the moment, considering that they have friendly relations with both Iran and the United States?
Sri Lanka is not cannot take responsibility in this case because location is near from Sri Lanka, so that's why Sri Lanka rescue many people. That is a good attitude, but at the same time, this is not Sri Lanka's war, so that's why Sri Lanka is third party and do not intervene the situation except rescuing is good. And so, of course, this is Sri Lanka's decision based on Sri Lanka's interest. And but Sri Lanka's attitude is not a problem because anyway, even if state versus state war has happened, the dead body as exchange between the state and state who involved war. So this is normal thing. Even if the war, there is a route between two, it's a better situation, and they should be. And in case of the Iranian ship, the U.S. submarine cannot help them, I believe, because revealing the location of submarine is very dangerous for submarine. So submarines in the past, in the World War II, indeed, the German submarine tried to that time German. In the World War II, the one submarine tried to rescue the crew of the sinked ship. This is the ship they sank, but they tried to rescue the crew. That has happened. But after that, because of this, big tragedy has happened about this submarine. So that's why after that, many countries prohibit the submarine to rescue the crew they sank. So that's why this is indeed a common habit in the world, indeed.
A change in conventions, if you will. Dr. Nagao, thank you so much again for joining us on the show. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest. Now to Asia, the Afghan Taliban has called the US decision to designate Afghanistan a state sponsor of wrongful detention regrettable, and said it wanted to resolve the matter through dialogue after the US demanded the release of US citizens held. This comes as when the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio had said that he was designated the Taliban government a state sponsor of wrongful detention and urged Kabul to free all detained US citizens, including Mahmoud Habibi and Dennis Coyle. However, Afghanistan's deputy spokesperson of Foreign Ministry, Hafiz Zia Ahmad Takal, has responded. Let's listen into what he had to say.
د افغانستان اسلامي امارت د بهرنیو چارو وزارت د امریکا د متحده ایالاتونو وروستۍ پریکړه چې
Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the World Report. And on NewsX World, let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. The US military says it has destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying boats in the Strait of Hormuz. After President Donald Trump warned Tehran not to deploy mines there, the strait is one of the world's most critical shipping routes for oil and gas. 3 commercial vessels have been damaged by what officials describe as unknown projectiles in the Strait of Hormuz. The incident has highlighted concerns about maritime security and global energy supplies. Iran has launched a new wave of missile and drone attacks across the Gulf region. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates say their defenses intercepted projectiles targeting military and energy sites. The Israeli military says it has begun an additional wave of strikes on targets in Tehran. The operation follows earlier attacks on command centers linked to Iran's armed forces. An Israeli airstrike in the town of Tamnin al-Tahta in eastern Lebanon has killed 7 people and wounded 18 others, according to the Lebanon Health Ministry. State media says the building hit in the attack was housing a Syrian family. Iran's police chief Ahmad Reza Radan has warned that anyone protesting at the enemy's bidding will be treated as an enemy. He said security forces have their fingers on the trigger as authorities move to prevent unrest. North Korea has expressed support for Mojtaba Khamenei after he was named Iran's supreme leader. Local state media also condemned what Pyongyang called the illegal US-Israeli attack on Iran. Europe's far-right parties are divided over the US-Israeli war on Iran. Figures including Nigel Farage and Spain's Vox back the strikes, while others warn the conflict could trigger wider instability and migration pressures. Now Now for this hour, we start with the breaking news from Africa. According to local medical sources, a drone strike in southern Sudan has killed at least 40 people. The victims were riding in a pickup truck heading to a funeral when the strike hit on the road between Abu Zabad and El Fula in West Kordofan state. Officials say many of the dead were women and several members of the same family were among those killed. Residents report that the victims have been buried together in the same location, underlining the tragic impact of the attack. The incident comes amid ongoing conflict and instability in the region, raising concerns about civilian safety and the use of drones in areas with high civilian traffic. Now for this hour, we start with Iran. Reza Pahlavi, the son of Iran's last Shah, is urging Iranians to stay home, stock up on essential supplies, and continue strikes across the country amid ongoing unrest. He describes the current turmoil as a crucial stage in the struggle against the Islamic Republic and calls on the military and security forces to break with the authorities and support the people. Authorities say he has told supporters to await his final instructions before taking further action, signaling a potential escalation if the situation continues to intensify. Let's listen into what Pahlavi has shared.
همیهنان عزیزم، ما اکنون در مراحل بسیار حساسی از مبارزه نهاییمون قرار گرفته ایم. از شما میخواهم که در اسرع وقت لوازم لازم رو تهیه بکنید و به خاطر امنیت خودتون خیابانها را ترک بکنید و در منازلتون بمانید. همچنان دست به اعتصاب بزنید و سر کار نروید. برای نشان دادن اتحاد خودتان شعارهای شبانه را ادامه دهید. نیروهای انتظامی و نظامی، این آخرین فرصتی است که حساب خودتون رو از نیروهای سرکوبگر جدا بکنید و به مردم بپیوندید. در انتظار فراخوان نهایی من باشید.
Now we welcome Mr. Dan Perry. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Perry, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now looking at this issue, hi, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Thank you. Now looking at the situation, do you think that this person, Reza Pahlavi, does he have any effectiveness, even though he has been, issuing comments and issuing statements such as the one we heard now?
The Iranian opposition, I think, is supported by a significant majority of the people in Iran, probably an overwhelming majority of the people in Iran, but it lacks a unifying figure, which throughout history has been a weakness of opposition movements when facing despotic governments that have total control over people's ability to congregate, to get out messages, to organize, and so forth. In that sense, Pahlavi, because of his name recognition, because of the fact that he has the staying power where he's been a figure known to the Iranian people for almost a half century, I think does have value. It's very important that Pahlavi projects that he does not have monarchic inclinations. He does not want to take over the Shah regime as such, but he clearly would like to leverage the fact that he's known and has support to become a transition figure on the way to an Iranian democracy. I interviewed him a year and a half ago, and my impression was that indeed that is his genuine aspiration, and as such he can be useful. Now, it's clear that this dynamic where he might become a unifying figure, maybe a symbolic figure, perhaps a transition figure, maybe ultimately an elected leader in Iran, is something the exile community, the Iranian diaspora in the UK, in the US, and elsewhere likes. I mean, he has a lot of support in those circles, not total, but significant. Within Iran itself, it's difficult to say because it's a completely unfree country and there aren't real opinion polls that are credible, and we don't know. But I think it's probable that under the right circumstances, Pahlavi can indeed gather enough momentum to become a figure of note and sort of a symbol of the array of different kinds of people that would like this regime to go. Whether they'll listen to him or not is an open question. He's very, very smart in telling the people right now to stay at home, but telling the military to start thinking about betraying the theocrats. The only hope of a regime change in Iran is if the men with guns eventually turn on their current criminal government. To rely on opposition street protest only is almost an invitation to have them continue to be massacred in the streets. What the regime, or what remains of it, or the current iteration of it, obviously has no hesitation in simply shooting at the crowds.
So do you think that Iranian people are ready to forgive him, or not him, but particularly his family, his dad, who was oppressing the Iranian people, and which also ended up in him or his family being in exile?
Not all of them for sure. Many of them also for sure. Which way it leans is difficult to say because of, as I say, the inability to really gauge public opinion on a large scale and on a representative methodology in Iran itself. I think the answer is yes, because when the Shah was overthrown, he was in his late teens. He's not responsible for any of that. And he, as I said before, does not seem inclined to become a monarchic figure that has absolute power, or even has power vested in him by virtue of his lineage. He presents himself as simply someone who's known and who has stood for opposition to the regime, and who is able to articulate the various ways in which Iran should change while still being true to its culture and to its national identity. I think the combination of these things, basically his celebrity combined with his something akin to his humility and disinterest in hereditary monarchy as such, combined with the innocence of the person who was the son of a dictator and not an actual active member of the dictatorship in the past, might
raising tensions across the continent. She has called for stronger international measures to prevent Iran from combining nuclear weapons with advanced missile technology. The comments come amid growing global concern over Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional security threats. Let's listen in.
Spero sia chiaro a tutti in quest'Aula che non possiamo permetterci un regime degli ayatollah in possesso dell'arma nucleare, unita peraltro a una capacità missilistica che potrebbe presto essere in grado di colpire direttamente l'Italia e l'Europa. Ancora di più perché questo scenario segnerebbe la fine del quadro internazionale di non proliferazione e darebbe vita a una corsa agli armamenti nucleari che avrebbe ripercussioni drammatiche sulla sicurezza.
I am, or any of us ever can be. But the sense in Tel Aviv and in Israel in general is that the air defenses, the anti-missile shield, essentially, of Iron Dome and of the Arrow 3 system and other systems remains reasonably effective, quite effective. You have had 12 people killed in Israel in the past 10 days. That's terrible, but yes, it is not many thousands. Most of the missiles are being intercepted. And it can be unsettling when you hear enormous explosions above your head, but with a few tragic exceptions, the missile landings have not caused enormous harm. And so, yeah, I think within reason, one does feel safe because of the anti-missile defense.
Although, thank you for letting us know the situation, Mr. Perry. And although, most of the missiles you say are intercepted, of course, some of the missiles did penetrate and led to, like you mentioned, 12 people being dead. Do you think that, this missile capability of Iran is very advanced, and how do you analyze current capacity of Iran? And also, another question, do you think there is a disalignment between Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, and the new leader, Mojtaba Khomeini?
Iran is extremely opaque and it's difficult to know what goes on behind closed doors and within the inner sanctum. And also, in general, when a nation is at war, especially when a police state is at war, one mustn't trust too much anything said in public. That said, Pezeshkian is a doctor, he's not a cleric. He was always seen as a moderate and a reformist. He has the cast about him of a pragmatic and moderate person within reason, within the bounds of what is possible in the Islamic Republic. Meanwhile, Mujtaba Khamenei has a reputation of a hardliner, even perhaps worse than his father. We don't know for sure. He has not made many public statements. He doesn't make a lot of speeches. He's not been visible for the past week and a half, and even long before. So it's a bit of a mystery, but it's reasonable to assess that given the degree of ruination visited upon Iran and the degree to which they've been exposed as something of a paper tiger, and just the fact that the regime was indisputably decapitated, and that Israel and the U.S. control their skies, all these things, I have to think, are leading to a discussion within the Islamic Republic about whether perhaps to agree to renewed talks and pausing the war. In those talks, they'd have to basically agree to American terms, which would mean an end to the missile program, the nuclear program, and the militias. The question is whether they're prepared to contemplate such a thing. It doesn't matter that the Iranian people obviously would like them to. Does it matter that the Iranian people would obviously like them to go further and to initiate reforms in the system? Even if the Islamic regime can remain in name, maybe they can move to more of a republic where the parliament and the president have real powers. All these questions are open, and I would suspect very much that Pezeshkian, the president, would like all this to happen, much as his predecessor, Rafsanjani, in the early 90s, aimed for something along the same lines when he had what was obviously a developing a misalignment with Khamenei, and Khamenei came out on top. And the result was an Iran completely run by the supreme leader and totally dedicated to the exporting of jihad around the region. We may be seeing a renewal of that type of internal discourse within the regime. And I think that will also inform the question of whether the military, the paramilitary, other elements of the security apparatus might make their voices heard, might pull things in a different direction, and might even perhaps, not impossible to contemplate, overthrow the government, as we heard Reza Pahlavi suggest. He hopes might be the case. All of this is possible. As for the situation with the rockets, Iran is obviously calculating that they can continue to fire rockets at Israel and at the Persian Gulf countries and block the Strait of Hormuz for enough time to unsettle the world and to outlast the patience of Trump, of American public opinion, of global public opinion, of the countries around Iran. If enough pressure is created to just call it a day, declare victory, and return to the status quo antebellum, that's what Iran is hoping for. And it's impossible to predict whether that will be successful, because of course we're dealing to an unsettling degree with the decision of one man, and that is Trump.
Yes, indeed. With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Dan Perry for joining us today from Tel Aviv and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Turkey. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has urged that the ongoing war must be stopped before it engulfs the entire region. He has warned that continued conflict would lead to more loss of life and destruction. Erdogan has highlighted the wider impact, saying the war is increasing costs to the global economy and could escalate further if not halted. He has called for urgent international actions to prevent the situation from worsening. The Turkish leader has stressed that ending the conflict is crucial to regional stability and global economic security. Now we welcome Mr. Collins Chong-Yu Keith. He's a foreign affairs and security and strategy analyst, joins us live from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much, Mr. Keith, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, although Erdogan has called for this, not just him, many other leaders have called for the same about the situation in Iran. How do you think, do you think there is any back channel diplomacy that's happening since we don't see direct diplomacy, of course? Do you think any country like Turkey, China, or Russia is interested in mediating between these countries now, Israel, Iran, and US?
Yes, we have seen how the position of Turkey has been strategic. Ankara maintains relations with Iran, with NATO, of course the Gulf states, and so Erdogan is attempting also to position Turkey as a mediating power. Of course, also at the same time preventing any kind of escalation or instability on his southern flank, on his southeast flank, with regards to Iran. And the statement also reflects the, it's not only about humanitarian role, but of course, serving also the core strategic interests of Turkey. Long Iran conflict will also destabilize the region, including Iraq and Syria. And these are the places where Turkey has already, he has faced, existing insurgency of the Kurdish insurgency, the threats and risks rising from these places. And of course, also it's important also to maintain the energy corridor, the energy security for Turkey. But more often than not, it's also increasingly important for Turkey, for Erdogan especially, to maintain a role as a regional mediator, similar to his role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And of course, this is important because we have seen how he has remained a target for the past couple of weeks, for the past couple of days now, in terms of this a wider escalation of the Iran conflict, and this is also increasingly being at the forefront of the core wariness and concerns of Turkey to prevent this geographical spillover risk. Now stretching the entire Persian Gulf, we have Iraq, we have Syria, of course parts of the Eastern Mediterranean, and of course also the efficacy of the proxies in the region. Iranian aligned groups, we have Hezbollah, we have also the militias in Iraq and Syria, and of course this will have profound impact on the security calculations of Turkey as a whole, and hence we have seen how this statement is also a reflection of Erdogan's concerns, and to prevent this to prevent this to escalate into a multi-front regional conflict theater in this region.
And looking at Russia and Ukraine, some of our guests have said that Russia is benefiting from this situation. Some of our guests have said that Ukraine is benefiting from this situation. What's your take on that?
Well, we have seen there's a mixed impact on both players. We have seen also how this a new theater being opened up in this part of the world, in West Asia and Middle East. Of course, the hopes from Moscow be that this will also create a new distraction, a new theater of conflict of this ingrained presence. Of course, this military disruption for the US, and that is hoped to also to be translated on the ground of Ukraine. How maybe Europe and the US are now engaged deeper in Iran, and of course this will give further openings for Russia to push things through, but also at the expense of Russia in terms of the loss of munitions, supply of military equipment, apparatus from Iran, is conventional ally. But in terms of the broader perspective, in terms of energy prices and energy security, we have seen now the EU especially he has now faced this increased supply crunch of this energy sector, and talks have been also abound on the need also maybe to reconsider the sanctions on Russian oil and gas, and now that this instant skyrocketing of oil prices. But Ursula has also come up with a statement that is increasingly risky, and there's no way for the EU to go back to the conventional times of increasing reliance on Russian oil, and now that that remains a possibility. But of course also the opening up of this strategic reserve also has been used as an option. But Russia stands to gain in some areas, but it also stands to lose in some areas. But all in all, as we can see, it does not have a profound impact on the power equation or on the conflict equation in Ukraine as of yet. Things are still going through in parallel, negotiations have also been have now been resumed, and of course, despite all this, as I've stated, also the sheer might and volume of the U.S. power presence, whether in Europe, whether in the Middle East or in West Asia, whether in the Indo-Pacific or in Southeast Asia or in East Asia, those tend to remain as the primary deterrent factor, whether against Russia, whether against China. China is well aware of this, and he has so far restrained on any potential escalatory moves on Taiwan, for example. So, and this showcases the existing deterrent strength of the U.S. under President Trump.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, for sharing that. Please do stay with us. Now, staying in Europe, French Finance Minister Roland Lescure has said that G7 leaders are ready to take all necessary measures to stabilize energy market after a G7 meeting of finance ministers who had discussed the possibility of a joint release of emergency oil reserves. Lescure has added that for the moment, there was no problem with oil or gas supply, whether in Europe or in the United States. He has also said that oil prices hit their highest since mid-2022, surging at one point by some 30% following unfolding crisis in the Middle East. Let's listen in.
Très clair, aujourd'hui, le marché du pétrole et le marché du gaz également sont affectés par des bouleversements qui sont essentiellement liés au fait que les exportations de pétrole et de gaz qui sortent du Moyen-Orient se dirigent vers l'Asie, zone qui est du coup directement affectée par des bouleversements de marché. Aujourd'hui, il n'y a aucun problème d'approvisionnement de pétrole ni de gaz, que ce soit en Europe ou aux États-Unis. Pour autant, nous allons regarder de près la manière dont nous pouvons stabiliser l'ensemble des flux, l'ensemble du marché, et je le répète, en étudiant toutes les mesures, y compris, pourquoi pas, la libération des stocks stratégiques. Écoutez, vous aurez un communiqué du G7 qui est en train d'être terminé, qui j'espère va être diffusé dans l'heure qui vient, et vous verrez que, évidemment, l'unanimité des membres du G7 était d'accord avec ce communiqué, et je pense qu'il répondra directement à votre question et qu'il vous rassurera sur ce point.
Now we welcome back Mr. Colin Chong-Yu-Keat. He's joining us live from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much, Mr. Keat, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, to me, thank you. To me, it seemed like, French finance minister is undermining the situation. As you know, do you think that these G7 countries can sustain such measures by allowing ready to take these necessary measures, as in releasing the emergency oil reserves? Of course, this is not a long-term strategy. What do you think they should do, and what do you think about the finance minister's statements?
Well, it reflects this, rising wariness and concern by the Western states, especially by the G7, of course, in terms of anticipating what this might turn up in terms of whether there's any risk of further escalation and maybe a protracted or prolonged conflict. And of course, the main concern will be a prolonged situation where this will disrupt supply chain and of course supply capacity. And there's this now main necessity for these states to ensure that there's a need to stabilize market temporarily, of course, by releasing these reserves. And he has been proven to work in the past, where he will stabilize the market quickly, calming any notion of panic by injecting millions of barrels of oil. But of course, the main concern is how this will turn out in the next couple of months, whether this will be prolonged. But as I've stated before, that I don't see any kind of a prolonged or sustained escalatory price increase for oil. And of course, we've seen how statements alone by President Trump, by saying that the U.S. is moving ahead even further in the timeline of this projection of achieving its objectives on Iran, and that this will wrap up soon, and that there's also this deterrent effect of the U.S. power presence to ensure that the Strait of Hormuz is it remains open, and this has also given this positive impact on oil prices for the past couple of days now. But I don't foresee any kind of this risk of a long-term price increase beyond $120 or $150 per barrel, and that this escalation in this part of the world, the main impact will be felt by nations in the Indo-Pacific, particularly. We have seen how nations, including China, including also India, and of course those who have been reliant on the Middle Eastern oil. Of course, Japan and South Korea also, they are the ones who will be facing the main repercussions and impact. Not so much on the European states, and of course, definitely not so much on the American consumers. Of course, oil prices will rise, and inflationary pressures will be felt. But as President Trump has stated that this remains a limited timeline, and of course also under this notion of this energy independence and energy dominance now being revived by President Trump, especially in the US, I don't see any kind of profound, or prolonged impact on the US in particular, in light of all these measures that have been put in place even before this war in Iran, and what President Trump has done in terms of reviving the energy dominance of the US. And I don't see this being seen as a dominating factor in limiting any kind of moves on Iran in the next couple of months. But as I've stated, this will remain constrained in the matter of 1 or 2 months. I don't see this escalating beyond.